Welcome to the February 3rd edition of the PFF Forecast. This is the last one before the Super Bowl, Bucs Chiefs. So we're going to talk, of course, about the game a little bit. We've got props. I've got some fun props as well that I've done a lot of research on.
Nice.
So you better listen closely. And we're going to talk about some Deshaun Watson trade scenarios and Derek Carr and whether he's worth trading for or what the hell to do with him. So let's rock. Lamented to me at the beginning when we walked in here about where we were last week. And now I'm trying to overcome sadness. I'm trying to get over it.
I know.
It's a little sad.
Yeah.
Here's the worst part. I expected everyone to be remote, doing the Super Bowl stuff. But when you watch ESPN, there's like 3 people that are there and it's sunny and they're not wearing, they're not bundled up, and it really hurts.
I'm wearing short sleeves. Almost as a
mental state.
Yeah, as a mental state. It's sort of like when I stopped wearing a jacket in March, living.
Well, that's toughness.
Well, yeah, but you're sort of willing winter to end. I'm like willing this week to be better than it is, but I don't know if I have that much sway.
I will let our wonderful listeners know that Eric has been doing a pretty good job of getting me closer to going to Tampa. Just saying, screw it. Putting the K95 mask on, making the move.
I heard, by the way, I read this story that says if you double mask, it is effective.
Really?
Yeah.
What about, does it get better with 3, 4?
I don't know. I mean,
What's the return
I feel
on
like
that?
there's like a thresholding effect. Yeah. But yeah, I mean.
I'm going to go. So there's actually, this is funny. There's a prop that is, it's like I found it somewhere. And it's, will a coach have the mask on but the nose hanging out over the top?
Sure.
And you expect, so Andy's been wearing the mask, so like Santa
beak.
hat mask. Yeah. He's been good about it. But Bruce has just said screw it completely, and he's going face shield.
Wasn't he wearing, didn't he look like the bird in Family Guy that like fights Peter Griffin for a couple of games there?
And I think maybe someone was like, hey, not the greatest look.
Yeah, not the greatest look.
Not the best.
I gotta say the best mask story. So aside from a guy wearing gym shorts over his face the one
That's
game,
pretty good.
The best mask was obviously McCarthy on opening day.
Yeah,
because it was just like
it was a part of his face.
yeah, it was like embedded.
It's gonna be really funny in like 3 years from now. You're moving somewhere and you have this pile of masks, and you're like, what the heck? Are you
still going to be? So you remember in Big Short where Brad Pitt's character wore a mask in the airport?
Yeah.
Are you going to be one of those? I feel like I'm going to be.
Well, I might be the last person to ever get a vaccine because poor me. But that's what we are.
Actually, you're going to be the last person who wants a vaccine that's going to get it. There's going to be plenty of people.
Right. I do want the vaccine.
Yeah.
I'm just saying I'm last on the list of people that gets to get the vaccine, unfortunately. Okay, let's go to Watson and Derek Carr. What do you want to start with first? Actually, I've got a treat for you.
Go for it.
What this is?
What's that?
So, our listenership, wonderful listenership. We have beautiful listeners, the best listeners, tremendous listeners. But I found out that we have a female listener that actually listens to the podcast somewhat regularly as a result of, can you guess?
The Steve Kornacki one, obviously.
Of course. I mean, it wasn't like, hey, I'm looking for a good football podcast.
Yeah.
I love betting on football, which I listen to, but a huge fan of Steve Kornacki, a really good friend of my girlfriend. Her name is Cassidy. And the way I found out about Cassidy actually listening to more than just the Kornacki podcast is that my girlfriend received some angry text messages about a particular take that you had. So Cassidy's from New Orleans.
Oh, yeah.
So she is a Drew Brees fan, and she was listening to the podcast where you said Drew Brees is not on the tier with Brady and Manning and Montana and Young and the whole deal. Luckily, I brought it back. I said that he had done so much for New Orleans, but we almost lost. We gained her and then almost lost her in one fell swoop. So shout out to Cassidy. Maybe we'll slowly improve.
Well, I just looked. Brees has had a terrific career. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. But somebody's got to be in the second tier.
There's nothing wrong with being in the second tier all time. Among
Brees, by the way. So I loaded this up to talk about Carr. But since 2014, Brees, third most valuable player in all of football, worth 19.5 wins, behind Rodgers and Brady. Mm-hmm. Brady, most valuable. He's cleared Rodgers by 4 wins during that time.
Wow. I mean, he has thrown a lot of passes. It's interesting because the Carr, I was thinking of quarterbacks on the good end and quarterbacks on the bad end that you might compare Carr to. And Brees is like the best one, right? Because it's like, well, didn't have a great situation, has struggled with, kind of a franchise that doesn't totally get it.
Yeah.
If he goes to a franchise that does get it, I don't want this to happen, but San Francisco.
So I'm wondering here, because so I tweeted this out. I think it's actually a fairly solid thing. When you're looking at fourth down decisions, you look at the opposing fans, and if they're relieved that you're punting's a dumb decision.
Yeah.
Can we extend this to the quarterback spot? Because when I mention like Kirk Cousins to you, and you like recoil, does that mean that Cousins is a bad choice for the franchise? I kind of think so. But Carr, now, what is it about Carr? Because Carr, 8th most valuable quarterback in all of football since he's joined the NFL in 2014. Ahead of Stafford, ahead of Cousins, ahead of Dalton, ahead of Newton, ahead of, guys that have played Jameis, who was just joined the league a year later, basically, just behind Roethlisberger, Rivers. He's had a good career, but the problem is, right, he's always an arm's length away. Is that kind of, and then there's also like the posing on a car and all this kind of, there's also like being the poster boy for that rule, by the way. Like, what is it about Derek Carr that as a 49ers fan, you're just like, I don't know.
So I thought about this long and hard because I want to make something very clear. I'm going to lean in on this one using some of my new techniques from Jerry Madelon. Lean in, I'm going to slow down.
The GOAT, by the way.
Yeah. I would much rather have Derek Carr on my team as my quarterback than Kirk Cousins by a country mile. And that is in large part because of the disposition of the player and all those things. But Derek Carr is very accurate. And you mentioned Drew Brees, and this is why I came up with this comparison. It's Drew Brees, it's Tom Brady, and it's Derek Carr in terms of percentage of throws that are accurately charted as accurate. And that's really impressive. Now, he has the low ADOT that Brees has. There's a lot of those components there. He's also a little more mobile. So there are some ways that you can go, hey, this actually fits with what someone like a Sean McVay or a Kyle Shanahan, where they're relying on accuracy, relying on some mobility, and relying on yards after the catch. And so those things all make sense. What is tough for me is not that Derek Carr isn't good. It's that I don't think he's good enough.
Yeah. I mean, that's fair.
And so like if you're asking me, and maybe this is because of my personal disposition, I probably think differently than a lot of owners and coaches, which is like, get me in the tournament. And then we'll go from there. And I'm all about what's going to win me a Super Bowl. And if you invest in Derek Carr or Kirk Cousins or any of these other quarterbacks where their ceiling to me is QB7, then what you're doing is you're tying yourself into 3 to 4 years of hoping. And if I'm the Niners, for me, there's 2 options. There is Deshaun Watson, or there is Zach Wilson / Justin Fields, trading up. I don't want, if you're going to give me a new mediocre quarterback, stick with Jimmy G.
Yeah, well, and I'll say this, Carr makes too much money to be that kind of quarterback, unfortunately.
Yeah.
And look, there are different quarterbacks for different seasons of franchises. I think of, so Kansas City's playing in this, and I bring it back to them all the time. But the Chiefs were 2-14 in 2012. Their coach, like Scott Pioli, bugged Todd Haley's part. Like we're talking about a franchise in shambles. Alex Smith is not good enough.
Yep.
But Alex Smith is good enough to get you to a position where you realize how far you are away. And so I always look upon his tenure in Kansas City fondly. I don't need to go from long and wide to tell you how good he is. It's not about that. It's about the season of that franchise. Carr is a better version of Alex Smith, way better version, and he belongs.
I was just about to say Drew Brees is a better version of Alex Smith.
Yeah, and Carr belongs.
That's what it is.
Carr belongs on a team that.
I'm sorry, Cassidy. I was kidding.
Yeah. Carr belongs on a team that needs to get out of that rut.
Yeah.
So if that's the New York Jets, if that's the Houston Texans, possibly, right? X, Y, and Z. Like that's where Carr, I think, can make the money in the NFL and be useful. He sort of reminds me of this is an old timer, but like a Dave Craig, who, if you look at all like the leadership of all time, he's great, but he's never contending for a championship. But he's useful in that way. That was the miscalculation the Vikings made with Cousins. That would be the miscalculation the Niners make should they acquire Carr or Cousins. Yeah. The Niners are in a position where that quarterback's got to take – like Kyle Shanahan was up 28-3 in a Super Bowl. He was up 20-10 in a Super Bowl. Like getting in the tournament is meaningless to this guy. And and it looks like that too. This past season, shit hit the fan, and you know what they did? They played for a draft pick. Good for them.
Not enough.
Yeah, not enough. But you know what I'm saying. So I agree. So what are the teams that could use a Carr?
Okay. So the first one that came to mind are the Saints. I actually think from Derek Carr's perspective, the Saints, I don't know how the hell he could even get there. We'll have to ask Brad about that one. There would be some weird, crazy shit that would happen where 15 people would tweet out immediately, the cap doesn't matter, all of those things. But that to me would be the perfect situation for him because he is, to me, his ceiling is Drew Brees. And even from a wonkiness of character standpoint, he is Drew Brees. Okay, let me give you another one. What about the Bears? Because apparently the Bears are hot on the Derek Carr train. And you make a really good point, which is a team that needs to learn how far away they are.
Yeah,
the Bears are, because they've had a terrible quarterback.
Because the Bears had one season of success and spent that entire offseason thinking they were a kicker away.
Yep.
They clearly don't know how far away they are.
Yep.
So they could use a Carr to sort of bump up against. And here's the thing. The NFC North is a division that is winnable.
Yeah.
And so if they get Carr and they take it, let's say, to a divisional round, and it's like, okay, we need to do what the Chiefs did, or we need to do what Houston did with Watson. That would make a lot of sense. Here's another team that I think, and it's not going to happen because it's within the division, but I think the Denver Broncos could really use a Derek Carr. I think, even to a certain degree, this again won't happen because Roethlisberger's still there, but I think Pittsburgh could use a Derek Carr.
Yeah.
Like Pittsburgh's a
really good one.
Pittsburgh's not a Super Bowl caliber football team. Like unfortunately, and we all thought they were, but again,
well,
like you peel away that defense just a little bit, and
is he that big of an upgrade over Big Ben? It's interesting.
I think so.
Yeah, I mean at this point, certainly.
Ben's cooked, man. Here's the last one I'll say.
Carolina's a very good one. Carolina's a very good one because with Joe Brady, you could really get a lot out of him.
Perfect Joe Brady quarterback.
Perfect.
Teddy's probably half a standard deviation below what a perfect Joe Brady quarterback is, unfortunately for him.
So what is Derek Carr worth to you?
So let's unpack what Stafford was really worth. Stafford was worth a first and a third, and a discounted first.
So the Panthers offered
the 8th overall pick.
Who was the better quarterback last year, Matt Stafford or Derek Carr?
Derek Carr.
So if the Carolina Panthers offered pick number 8 for Matt Stafford, now it got turned down because the Lions got 2 firsts and Jared Goff. I'm not sure which is better there. I think you can kind of debate those two.
Yeah.
But if you get offered pick number 8 for Derek Carr, so John Gruden was on Chris Collinsworth's podcast. It's worth a listen just to listen to John Gruden
talk. Yeah.
He is a magician. Okay. So he says a couple of things. First off, he waxes poetic about how great Deshaun Watson is. And then says, He's got to stay with the Texans. The Texans got to keep him. No way they're trading him. He then goes on to say, you know what I love about Tom Brady? He's so good at discerning what a defense is going to do. Just like Derek Carr. Okay. This dude sold Derek Carr like he was a Rolls Royce. And I wrote in my notes, Derek Carr is the perfect quarterback to trade. Here's why. His defense sucked. This is the Matt Stafford thing all over again. Oh, well, Derek Carr is actually a great quarterback. His defense has been holding him back. It's the perfect time. He had a good season. They are the only team to have beaten Patrick Mahomes, and they were 3 points away the next time, okay? It took Jonathan Abram, having a conniption on the last play in order to lose that game to the Chiefs, or they would have been 2-0 against Patrick Mahomes. It's the perfect time. If you can get the number 8 pick from Carolina for Derek Carr, that is out the door and on its way. And then John Gruden is taking that pick. He's taking a couple other Raiders picks, and he's going after Deshaun Watson. Because guess who else doesn't need to do anything besides try and win a Super Bowl? It's $100 million man John Gruden. Maybe you include Darren Waller. So here it is. Carr to Carolina, bring in 8. 8, Darren Waller, 2 more firsts.
For Deshaun Watson.
And
I think that's part of, we've seen it already, right? Cleveland, for years, had the bounty of picks that they got from Sashi Brown and waited, took the quarterback finally. And Mayfield has his up and downs, but he looks like a decent quarterback at this point. Oakland/Las Vegas had the picks from the Khalil Mack trade, the Mari Cooper trade. Didn't use any of them on a quarterback. And frankly, didn't pick good players.
Yeah.
That's part of Cleveland's issue too. Waited. Sometimes waiting is okay. That's why we've seen historically in the past quarterbacks taken in that 12 to 32 range, generally speaking, suck because they're reaches, right? The Paxton Lynch's and all that. Maybe, and again, this is the same thing with the Lions. We're trying to prescribe brilliance to a situation that might just be noise
it's
and
just
them just
kind of luck, yeah.
But could this have been a situation they lucked into? Carr coming off of just an absolutely, it's the second straight year he played awesome in the first half of the year and then sucked in the second half and kept them from actually being a playoff team, but good enough where a team can convince themselves that he's at least the next step to being competent. And again, we have to realize what the goals are for these teams. For the Niners, it's to win the Super Bowl. For Carolina, it's to make the playoffs. To make the playoffs.
Do you know how nuts
and Carr
that
can
place
help
would
them make
go?
the playoffs.
It's such an interesting dynamic, and I actually think what you have described, I'm not going to take credit for this. You did a perfect job describing an inefficiency in the NFL, which is using teams' optimal outcomes against them, not in a way to benefit yourself. So if you are Super Bowl or bust, and there are teams out there that aren't, you really benefit from having that average quarterback because you can trade him for way more than he's worth, a la Matt Stafford or Derek Carr.
And if you have organizational stability, you can afford to make some of these moves. So the Bears, for example, are a team. They're a mark right now because
a little unstable, yeah.
Because their general manager and coach are making decisions to maintain their jobs. Gruden, as much as
Gruden went on a podcast and recruited Richard Sherman. Gruden's
Gruden's
above everything.
We're talking about 7 more years left on his deal.
Yeah.
You look at Rule. Rule's got 5 more years left on his deal. You look at Shanahan and Lynch, just got an extension. The marks are obviously Houston, and then some of these teams where they have sort of win now, the Rams, for example, you're talking about win now, sort of mandates, and you can really squeeze these teams with different time horizons than you.
I got a text from someone that said he's gone in all caps, and I'm scrolling through Twitter to find out what we've missed. But I figured Zach Tantillo, our guy, would let us know if there was breaking news.
Yeah. Well, so is it a basketball tweet?
I have no idea.
Do the Lakers have to dump anybody right now?
Dude, by the way, how funny was was courtside Karen?
Oh man, I'm preparing to take a month off of sports betting, so I haven't followed the NBA. like as soon as the Super Bowl's over, I'm gonna kind of like go cold turkey for a little bit.
Good.
So I haven't gotten into the NBA so much because I like don't want to bet it when it's the only thing on.
So do you need me to tell you the story at all?
No, I kind of knew, but I wasn't like watching the game when it happened.
Yeah, I mean neither was I, but it's pretty funny. Okay, I have some Watson trade scenarios that I want to run by you, and I want you to tell me which ones you like best.
Okay.
We talked about the Raiders one. The Niners, Bosa, 2 firsts and a second.
I mean, it's worth it because don't you think Bosa is a less valuable trade chip than Chase Young?
That's what I was going to ask you. Okay, so the football team then offers Chase Young, 2 firsts and a second.
That's a stronger offer because, and I wrote about this on the site this week about Shaq Barrett. The hard part about edge players is the delta between a top end edge and an edge picked in the first round. I mean, Chase Young made $8 million last year. He's this number 2 overall pick. That's $12 million less than Frank Clark made.
Right.
Like,
so if you're the Niners and the football team and you're going, the Niners obviously have more pieces that they can then add on to that, right? They also have a higher first round pick. Does Jimmy G move the needle at all? Is there another young defensive player?
Does Jimmy G move the needle at all? I don't think so, right?
Maybe, but we think of this so differently, right? Because we're sitting here and a lot of people go, no, you've got to take a shot with Derek Carr because he could be great. And we go, there's a lot of evidence that says that's a 1 or 2% chance. It's not worth taking. But Jimmy G was a guy that Bill Belichick supposedly really wanted, So maybe you do. Maybe you can flip Jimmy G to the Patriots for a pick, and then that helps strengthen your trade offer.
Yeah.
Let me ask you this, though. Which team is better off making that trade, the Niners or the football team?
In a weird way, it's probably the football team. And here's why. The Niners can win. The Niners can get as much as I wouldn't endorse it. The Niners can compete for the highest, achievements with a quarterback worse than Watson. I don't think the Washington football team can compete for much without a brilliant quarterback.
I think that's right. Okay. The Dolphins, 3 firsts, Xavier Howard and Tua.
I was going to add Xavier Howard because that's a great point. Our veteran players, especially veteran players coming off of outlier season, Howard's not picking off 10 passes next year.
He's a really good corner.
He's a good corner, and Houston needs defensive backs like I need to breathe, okay?
Yep.
So it makes a lot of sense.
You need a lot of air to breathe, by the way.
Yeah, and it's cleaner for teams like Miami and New York, right? Because it's not – the first-round picks aren't going deeper, right? So you could almost even make the argument that fewer first-round picks are required for those teams because of the time value of the picks.
And the Dolphins are giving them the 3rd pick. So the opportunity for them to either stick with Tua or take a guy to compete with him, I think that offers the Texans the most. I like that trade a really good amount. I think that's the front runner. My last thing for you is agree or disagree. I don't think the Jets should trade for Deshaun Watson.
I disagree.
Okay. Let me make my case.
Okay.
My case for the Jets is that they are an awful football team.
Mm-hmm.
They are a terrible football team right now.
Yep.
And bringing in Deshaun Watson is going to cause them to do things that I think are irrational to try and make them better in the near term. Whereas if I were running the Jets, I would stick at 2. I would take Zach Wilson, who I love. I would build around that. I would use the draft capital that I have to try and become a dominant team in 3 to 4 years.
So that's not a terrible take. That's obviously a rational choice. Here's my thing, though. You trade Jamal Adams for a moment like this.
Look, I can't argue with that. By the way, a fleecing.
Yeah, and look, and if you put Jamal Adams into this, so let's say we say you number 2 overall pick and the 2 Seahawks picks.
Yeah.
Let's say that's the trade.
You probably need to throw in May.
Or like a number, but let's say you said, okay, we'll trade you a first-round pick, Jamal Adams and Marcus May for Deshaun Watson. You would, immediately if you're the Jets. And that's the reason you trade Jamal Adams because when you're not good, because that turns into assets that you can use to become actually good.
So that team then needs to go out and sign a lot of players.
Yes, but they have to sign fewer. So
it's doable. I'm just saying they do.
They have to sign fewer players though than you think with Watson, than with Wilson. Now they have more money too. They certainly will, but they have $63 million in cap space, and the teams with a ton of cap space this year are at such a higher advantage than teams with tons of cap space previous years because it's relative to everybody else. You talk about Carr with New Orleans. Like, New Orleans is going to sign Jameis back because he's going to be like $5 million. It was a long con by Sean Payton.
It's the blessing in disguise that Tony Dungy was always talking about.
Yeah. And like, because they don't have any cash, like no one has cash. So you're going to get your pick of the litter. And I'm as much as a fan of Wilson as I am, like, there's just less hand-holding from a support standpoint that's necessary for him, or for Watson than for him. And so, like, you look at like Crowder, you look at some of those players that have had some success there. It was success that was clouded in like bullshit, which was. I don't think that they need as much with Watson. Obviously,
Watson. I think if it comes down to Miami and the Jets, Watson is saying, I have a no trade clause, send me to Miami. That's my guess.
So I would think that too, but the Giants being down and the Jets playing in the biggest media market in our country, I think would possibly appeal to Watson.
I do. The caveat is this. Media markets mean way less now
than they used to, for sure.
Ever have. And Yeah. So, Zach Tantillo, Roto World Football. Deshaun Watson would not veto a trade to the Jets. Interesting. We'll see how that changes. It's going to be fascinating.
No, but I mean, I think you're right. It's going to be fascinating, and I think we're probably underestimating the likelihood he stays with Houston. Weirdly, unfortunately,
I'm also imbuing my own desperate desire to go to a place that isn't 30 degrees and awful. And Deshaun Watson can go to Cabo for the entirety of the offseason.
Correct.
So it's not that big of a deal. Okay, actually, I have one last question for you. Go to the Super Bowl. You have 15 seconds to answer this. Would you rather have Derek Carr or Kirk Cousins as your quarterback next year?
Derek Carr.
Okay. All right.
Derek Carr can move. Derek Carr's
in mysterious ways.
No, there was a game that was played in Cleveland with like really crappy weather, and Carr gutted the hell out of that game. We had Cleveland against the spread, and Derek Carr was gutsy as hell in that game.
He's got a little Mamba mentality.
Whereas
Kirk Carr a little bit.
The lawn chair that Kirk would fold in that game.
Okay. You ready to talk a little Super Bowl?
Let's do it, man. Super Bowl.
So let's do a couple of things first. We're going to get to what we're betting on this game. We're going to do a few hedge opportunities if you have KC or Tampa Bay futures, and then we're going to do some props. But let's start with this. The three most important non-quarterbacks, because all anyone's talking about is Tom Brady and Patrick Mahomes. We talked about it like a billion times. So you go first. One person. We'll go in alternating order.
The most important non-quarterback in this game is Kelsey.
Okay. I knew you were going to take Kelsey.
I wanted to be different, but it's the answer.
Okay. Here's why I didn't take Kelsey, though. Kelsey is Mahomes to a certain degree. So I didn't put a single Chiefs pass catcher on here because to me, that argument is all about Mahomes. So tell me this, how does Kelsey have to play well above isn't that really just Mahomes finding him?
Yes, but the mismatches he can give rise to are so look, this is not what I would do. Actually, our colleague Timo Risky said, and I agree with this, the Bucs should play defense the same way that they did in the first matchup and just hope for variance sake that like they hit two of those three passes and not all three of them. If the Bucs, and Arian said it today in the press conference, it's my fault. I didn't give Davis enough help. If they help Davis with safeties, who are, by the way, banged up, then you're going to be talking about Levante David, who hasn't practiced fully the whole 2 weeks, hamstring injury. Levante David, by the way, less than like a 50 grade covering tight ends this year, and over 90 grade covering running backs.
Damn it!
So if you have David covering tight end, and you have Devin White blitzing and covering running backs, Sean Murphy Bunting this year against tight ends, 14 for 14 into his coverage, 123 yards and a touchdown. Kelsey is sort of that thing where it's sort of like playing Tetris, where like the Bucs defense is going to try to do everything they can to help Carlton Davis, and they're going to fill in over here, and then the leftover guys are going to have Kelsey, and the leftover guys are going to get filleted if they do that way. And to me, that's for a reason. That's how Kelsey, I think, ends up being a huge difference maker in this game.
I love your Kelsey MVP long shot
13-1.
And I bet him, one of my favorite props is Kelsey anytime touchdown and first touchdown. Okay. To your point, Todd Bowles is my first guy. And the reason is for exactly this, that he cannot overreact to what they saw in the first game. I rewatched the first game again, and I was shocked at how much less impressed I was with the Chiefs' offense than I thought I would be. Yes, they hit some deep shots, absolutely, but it was not they were not consistently gaining chunk plays. They could get 5 to 7 yards pretty much at will because they're the Chiefs, but I did not come away from that game going, yeah, the Bucs are in complete disarray and trouble. Antoine Winfield Jr. has a little more discipline on a few plays, and and that's a different thing. So I think Todd Bowles being conservative enough in the blitz packages, which he was in that initial game, right? And really, I think for Todd Bowles, what I would expect him to do is run some games up front with what he has without blitzing. And that's, they only blitzed 9 to 53 times against Mahomes. And so I think Todd Bowles having a creative yet not overreactionary game plan is big. Your next guy.
I think the second most important guy is Levante David.
For the Travis Kelce.
But not only that, but this is going to be a big game for Clyde Edwards-Helaire.
God help us all.
And I think when you look at the offensive line for the Chiefs being banged up, I think a lot of people don't realize what the delta is. We're not talking about Larry Allen being out
for the
left tackle for the Chiefs. Like Eric Fisher's okay. Yeah. Mitchell Schwartz hasn't played in forever. Chiefs do it with bad offensive line all the time. But I do think Levante David is the good linebacker in Tampa. And if they don't use him properly and he doesn't play well, they have no shot.
My next guy is Tyrann Mathieu. And I think Tyrann Mathieu is an incredibly important player in this game because he has, as great as Tom Brady has been, Tom Brady has also been a little more reckless relative to him. Now, not relative to the rest of the world because he's Tom freaking Brady. But Tyrann Mathieu has, Richard Sherman compared him to this. This is not my comparison. I'm not qualified to make this comparison. But to Ed Reed, in the way that he anticipates his feel for the game and his ability to make plays in that way. And I think with a team like the Buccaneers that takes chances, Tyrann Mathieu, a guy that will take chances, that will play his, will not be scared of the moment, that's for damn sure, is a very important piece. And if the Chiefs are going to win this game, the way that they can lose it is by falling apart on defense. And I think he is the glue that holds that all together. Any other guys that you have?
No, he's great. I mean, he's the obvious. I've said this all week. Chiefs are second best team in the NFL in limiting wide receiver yardage, third worst in tight end. Tyrann Mathieu is actually the Chief that has given up the most passing yards in coverage this year. Like they try, but it's under 600 yards.
But a lot of it is scheme.
A lot of it is schemed exactly to him, and so to me, that's like the ultimate testament, right? The Bucs have three of the 9 guys in the NFL who gave up 750 or more yards in the regular season play for the Bucs. Chiefs have no one over 600. It's a different defense, and Matthew allows them to play that defense. My player is Cameron Brate for the exact same reason. I don't think that Evans is a player that does much in this game. I think Godwin can. I don't think Scotty Miller is a player that does much. Like, the Chiefs don't get beat by these deep threat players. Mm-hmm. It's going to have to be Godwin, but L'Jarius Sneed has had a terrific season in the slot. And I think Gronk's kind of cooked. So, so Brate to me becomes the guy that is an important player for the Bucs.
Okay. My last one is a combo. It's Chris Godwin and Antonio Brown. For that exact same reason. They're going to need – Chris Godwin cannot be dropping passes in this game, and I think Antonio Brown needs to play. I think he's a guy that will give Brady a lot of confidence and can be – he has the route running ability to cause problems for the Kansas City Chiefs. And when he is right, if he is right, he is the second best wide receiver in this game behind Tyreek Hill, and makes it actually pretty close.
That's an interesting take, but it's not egregious for sure. He had more WAR this year in the regular season than Godwin did, despite snap differentials. That's good.
Okay. What's before we get to the bets real quick, what's the thing or matchup that's being discussed that's just being way overrated and overly discussed?
The Bucs defensive line versus the Chiefs O-line.
That's the first thing that I wrote down. I mean, it's the first thing that every single person mentions. But this is not, as you mentioned, something new to the Chiefs, and they're so good at handling this.
Well, and if you want to look at a game in which they maybe weren't, week 13 against New Orleans, Mike Remmers was out. Eric Fisher was doubtful all week, ended up playing left tackle at probably 60%. Andrew Wiley, who is now starting at right tackle, Remmers is going to start for Fisher at left tackle. Mahomes was pressured on like 24 or 54 dropbacks or something in that game and did not perform all that great. Chiefs still scored 32 points on offense, and Wiley actually played a good game at right tackle. You got Cameron Jordan so frustrated he tried to punch him out and got kicked out of the game. The Bucs defense is not as good on the back end as New Orleans defense is. So to me, I think that's the blueprint. That's really like the floor for the Chiefs. And when I see that, I'm thinking, okay, how much can that really affect the game? Plus, there's going to be some rain, and I do think rain affects pass rush more than it affects.
It's a good call. It's a great call.
So I just think it's not that big of a deal that everybody wants to talk about because we love the trenches.
Patrick Mahomes' average depth of target against the Bills was below 6 yards, under 6 yards. The last time it was under 6 yards was week 1 against the Houston Texans, where they put up, again, 30 points, 30-plus points, I think. And yet, in the conference championship, averaged 8.6 yards per attempt, ahead of, over his season average with that low of an average depth of target. That's because the scheme and the way that he plays adjusts to all the things around him better than anyone else. It's why it's what the Packers didn't do. Okay, let's get to some bets. How are you betting this game? This is hedge agnostic.
Yeah. I'm betting it a lot. That's how I'm betting this game. Chiefs and over. I'm a little bit less. Every time I see a 56.5, I buy a little bit. Mm-hmm. I mean, the 56 is really the only way you can go over. I think 56.5 you can't. If you're concerned about the weather, you're probably not going to be able to get off the game. I could be wrong. Maybe the lines had the possibility of weather sort of baked in.
Now you're taking Chiefs at -3 though.
Yeah, and money line. I mean, I think like that. In fact, actually, and I think that this was something that our friend Rufus Peabody said on his show. In a Super Bowl like this, people will bet the dog and they'll bet the favorite ATS. So there's a little bit of value. So notice the Chiefs have been basically -3 this entire time. Mm-hmm. The money line for them has actually decreased down to -163 on Pinnacle. We're seeing some under money here now. 56 is the under 56 is now the side there. So money line might actually have some value because of the way this game is bet.
That's actually really interesting.
Because people who like the favorite just think the favorite will blow them out. So they're happy to lay the 3. Mm-hmm. That'll be more expensive than the money line sometimes.
That's a good point. I think there is a decent amount of Tampa Bay love in the sense that I think they're going to win because they got Tom Brady, and the wackiness always.
Well, and people have bet against Brady like basically all the time. Like the New England was like 57% against the spread for years. So there's clearly been some value in betting, perceived value in betting against the Pats, and then it just like never sort of materializes. So people might be sitting here saying, I don't want this to happen again. But I'll say this: by this time, the number's not going anywhere. If there's value there, you probably maxed out that bet anyway. Whether you like Chiefs -3 or Tampa +3. So the value is really in the props and sort of how you can bet this thing indirectly.
Yeah, I've tried to get myself off of Chiefs -3. I have a little bit of Chiefs -3. I placed a decently sized bet on AFC winner -1.5. So I've stuck with that. And what I've done is I've bet the over at 56 a bunch. I've also bet second half over 27.5. And I've bet the quarter overs in the second half. I bet over 10.5 in the third quarter, over 14.5 in the fourth quarter. It just, to me, if you're going to see the offensive line versus the defensive line show up at any point in this game, and I'm talking about Chiefs offensive line versus the Bucs defensive line, I think it will be early. And also the Leonard Fournette establishment of the run is going to happen early. And it's either going to work and the Bucs are going to be up, which means the Chiefs are going to score in the second half, or it's not going to work and Tom Brady's going to have to throw in the second half. Yeah. So to me, it all points towards the second half having points. And so I like those.
Okay. So let's say that you like the Chiefs to win. What are some props that sort of correlate with that?
I like the Chiefs to win. What are some props that correlate with that? That's interesting. So part of me looks at the Travis Kelce props again, and I just don't believe that Bruce Arians is going to let Tyreek Hill beat them. He's just like the Bruce Arians mentality. I just don't see it. I don't see Todd Bowles doing that. So to me, Travis Kelce overs correlate really highly with that. And I don't know that there's Chiefs running backs. Like if you said, hey, the Bucs win, what's correlated with the Bucs winning? Like Leonard Fournette overs are something that would, right? Leonard Fournette scores a touchdown, those things.
That's where I disagree. So I think I have some Edwards-Helaire over 9.5 rushing attempts. I have some Edwards-Helaire over, not big, but over like 33.5 rushing yards. That's moved up since I took it at earlier in the week. I have some Darrell Williams unders because I think transition to Darrell Williams, like I think his prop is 7.5 carries. I like under that. Okay. Under 29.5 yards, I like under that. I think this game transitions into an Edwards-Helaire game. But one prop that I really like as far as if you like the Chiefs to win, here are some props that I think might correlate with that. No score in the last 3.5 minutes of the game. It's like plus 125. So Chiefs blow out Tampa. There's a good chance they just kind of bleed the clock out during the end of the game, and it sort of ends, right? And everybody loves like the scoring at the end of these halves and stuff like that. There's a ton of those props. I actually have a no score the last 2 minutes of the first half prop. Both kickers in this game are a little sketchy. It's also outdoors. It's also, going to be a little bit rainy. I got that. That's plus 250.
Wow.
No scores in the last two minutes of the game. Here's another one that I like that's correlated with Kansas City winning. First score, Tampa Bay field goal. It's like plus 450.
That's a great one.
And to me, this is why. So Arians, the last 2 times he's won the toss, has accepted the ball. Andy Reid always defers. So there's a pretty good chance that Tampa is going to get the ball first. Chiefs are a bend but don't break defense. So you move the ball down the field, a la Buffalo in the AFC championship game. Field goal by Ryan Suckup.
You mark it down. You got to put points on the board. You got to take the points.
And if you like Kansas City, obviously that's huge. If you're Kansas City and you give up a field goal on the first drive of the game, you're happy.
Tell you, I'm sure we're going to watch the game together wherever it may be. And when Ryan Suckup lines up to kick the field goal,
Ryan Suckup revenge game, by the way.
Your intoxicated ass is going to stand up, start fist pumping, start raising the roof. You might throw up. You might pick up a football and throw a seed somewhere.
Yep.
I might see the Eric reenactment of a pass rush stance happening.
Yep.
It's all coming out, and that to me is proof that it will be very good for the.
Here's another one that I like as well. If you like Kansas City in this game, no 2-point conversion converted. It's about minus. I think I got it at minus 280.
You're saying because Bruce Arians will not try 2-point conversions.
Well, he won't try one. He won't try one when they're behind by a ton of when they're down 19, they're not trying one to get it to 11.
Right.
He's not thinking that way.
He's not going to do the.
And if you think Kansas City's going to blow them out, they're never close enough to sort of kick that down 5 to make it down 3. Yeah. Okay. So, and the other thing is and here's the sneaky part, and you have to make sure for sack props. By the way, half a sacks can happen. So there's a push probability on those half a sack props, by the way. But in this one, the other one, the sneaky, it's 2-point conversion made. So they can go for a 2-pointer and be like what Alan Lazard and bobble at the back of the end zone, and you still win the bet if no other one is made. That one's a good one. Here's the last one that I like, okay, that I'll talk about from the Kansas City side. There's a prop that says, who's going to turn the ball over first? Kansas City, Tampa. There's a no turnovers option that's like plus 1,200. This is 2020. I like that bet.
Interesting.
Like I don't think Tampa has to turn the ball over for the Chiefs to roll, and I don't think it's all that much. Dude, Tom Brady has 16 interceptions this year. Has 17 turnover-worthy plays. I mean, we're talking about Mahomes has a lot of turnover-worthy plays relative to how good he is, but maybe it's the velocity on his ball or something like that. But the fact that a turnover could happen in this game is not a gimme.
That's interesting. I like that one. Okay. I have a couple here. If you have, I know some people have asked, they have Kansas City futures throughout the season that are paying, better than 5-1, or maybe you listen to us. We both have Tampa Bay 9-1 to win. What are some ways to hedge? And you talked about props, and I'll give you a couple of props that I like for hedging these. If you have Kansas City futures, I love Brady MVP plus 210. Okay, because if Tampa Bay wins this game, Brady will have to have hurt himself and not played to lose MVP. I mean, he could just hand the ball off all game, and they'd talk about how brilliantly he organized the defense.
Mahomes winning the MVP last year in a game where Damian Williams had over 100 yards and 2 touchdowns shows you, and Mahomes threw 2 interceptions. Brady's winning the MVP if Tampa wins.
I have one more for you. It's a little more risky, but it's a Tampa Bay player to rush for over 100 yards at 3-1.
I like that. I mean, that's something.
I also think if you can grab Tampa plus 3.5, that's a nice middle there.
Yeah.
And you can look for that. You can find that in some places.
Here's our stance on hedging. If it's a life-changing amount of money for you, do it.
Yeah.
Otherwise, if it's not, if you can afford to lose the money, unless you view that the hedge bet as positive
as positive EV,
then don't do it.
Yep.
That's the whole deal. And for a lot of people, if you bet Tampa 30-1, when they signed Brady or something, and you put $1,000 on it,
it is a life-changing amount of money.
You might,
you've
written it out this far though. That's the tricky part is if you haven't hedged all the way to this far.
True.
There's good questions there.
Maybe you haven't. All right. If you have Tampa Bay, I think Mahomes MVP, it's minus 106, right? So it's a little better than the money line. But then here's one that I really like, which is, and you can get both of these, but Brady pass attempts over 39.5. Everyone's talking about Leonard Fournette. Tom Brady's going to throw the ball in this game.
The reason to hedge with props and not the other side is because you might win both.
Yeah.
And the thing is, if you like Tampa and you're worried about Kansas City winning, but you don't want to bet Kansas City to win because you're not comfortable laying the 160 or whatever, Brady overs, right? Because they can win with Brady going over, but if they get behind, Brady is going over 295. I can't remember how many but all that kind of stuff. The Leonard Fournette and Ronald Jones unders are another situation where they can win if the running game doesn't work, but if they get behind, they're not pounding the rock that much, or if they're not going to win, they tried to pound the rock early in the game, were unsuccessful. Surprise, surprise, and then they had to pass at the end. And again, weirdly, if you're trying to simulate a Kansas City win, that's maybe when you might want to take some of, and this is where I've kind of hedged a little bit. You might want to take some of the like Mike Evans overs, because to me, I don't think Evans has a big game unless Tampa is behind, and the Chiefs play so far back that you see some of the stuff Diggs got at the second half of last game as opposed to the first half of last game. If the Bucs win, I think it's because of players other than Evans, and Evans plays a very good decoy in the game.
The other thing that I was going to mention is if you have the facility to bet live, that's also something that you can do, and you might find some opportunities. Like let's say that you do have, I think this makes more sense for if you have Tampa futures and Kansas City gets down early, you have an opportunity to maybe get them at plus money, or and that's a huge, because you can win both on a large percentage of the plays. So that's great. I would mention the props that we've already talked about. We've talked about Brady over 2.5 passing touchdowns. We've talked about Mike Evans under 4.5 receptions. Pat Mahomes under 330, I think it is now. Yeah. You might even find it 335 in some places.
Yeah. This brings up a good discussion. There are some props that you had to have hit early to get value. There are other ones that you should wait until game time, and those are where the square players are playing overs on popular players. So whether that is Evans,
Mike Evans is a good one.
Whether that is
Mahomes.
I mean, if Mahomes prop gets out to 340, it's. I mean, I might, and he throws for 400 yards. I might be living outside. But I
think that's happening either
way. But it is important to sort of think about the side and total on this game are going to probably close where they close, and they're right where they are currently. But some of these props will close in an advantageous ways towards sharper bettors at the close than where they open because of the way that squares move the market as far as overs.
A couple others, and you can go check out this article that we wrote on Monday, but I'll just mention a couple of other ones. Tom Brady under 2.5 carries. Tom Brady over 2.5 passing touchdowns. I think that's plus 125. I mentioned the Travis Kelce touchdowns. You had a guy to score 2+ touchdowns. Someone was talking about that they liked.
Was that Ben?
Maybe.
Brown?
Was he talking about? Was it Chris Godwin or Scotty Miller?
It was. It was somebody on that. Yeah, on that side.
Anyways, there's plenty of places to go. You can go to the Daily Betting Podcast where you guys discussed a bunch of those, and then go check out that article that we wrote. We have like 8 props on there. So I have. Do you have any more props?
Here are a couple that I like.
Give me a couple more, and then we'll go into the ones that have no mathematical backing.
I like Chief. I'm all over Chiefs second quarter stuff.
Okay.
So over 9 second quarter points, to Mahomes to throw a touchdown in the second quarter, Mahomes to Chiefs to score a touchdown in the second quarter. You're laying a big price for those, but I think I think this is how the Chiefs play football. It didn't happen in the last Super Bowl, but it's happened mostly in all their games. And I think that's it. Obviously we'll have another daily betting podcast. We'll have the live show. We'll have all that kind of stuff. But I think we've given you kind of I think some really good ones in this one to chew on here.
Okay, I did some research on some props. And some of them are just feel. But here we go. Okay. So let's start with the national anthem, where the game will start. Okay. Depending on where you go, you will find this either right at 2 minutes or at 1 minute 59 seconds. The average on the national anthem has been just over 1 minute 56 seconds. Longest rendition has been by Alicia Keys. It was well over 2 minutes. The juice is all on the under, because it's been under on average. It's been under a bunch of late. I think it's like minus 150, depending on where you go. You might find it minus 140 under. But it's a duo. It's a duet. Has not been a duet hardly ever.
A duet is what I call it.
And the last time there was a duet, I think it went over. I need to check that. I'll check.
But it would make sense fundamentally, right? If you map this out, like
they're gonna have to go back and forth. Now it's also two singers that are a little different, so they're gonna have to switch things up a little bit. I think each one's gonna want to show off. I am going over 2 minutes or minute 59 seconds on the national anthem. The female singer, I forget, is it Jasmine Sullivan, I believe, can carry out. I watched a couple of her national anthems. She's done them in the NHL All-Star Game before. She can carry out a note. I'll also say this. It's been a hell of a fucking year, okay?
Yes.
This is going to be a passionate rendition of the national anthem. It is important that she get an opportunity to sing the hell out of this fucking anthem.
What we need to do, 1990 Super Bowl, Buffalo versus New York, right during the Gulf War. Also, George, in what city? Tampa Bay.
Wow.
Gulf War was happening. People had to be patted down to go in. You know who sang the national anthem that night?
Who?
Whitney Houston. It was the best national anthem in the history of the Super Bowl.
Good.
And I don't know if it went over or not, but I'm assuming it did.
Yeah. So
I agree with you. It's so good. Like in a year with so much turmoil, just letting it all out. We might have to look at the 01 Super Bowl and think about the post 9/11 one.
So it's Eric Church and Jasmine Sullivan. Eric Church obviously not going to carry out notes super long, but Jasmine Sullivan can. And I think people like the under a little bit because she sang a minute 36-second rendition in the freezing fucking cold at an NHL All-Star game. That's the other thing. In the cold, it's going to be a little harder to belt those notes out. Yep. I don't think she'll have that problem here.
I like the way you think.
So I'm going contrarian here.
Here's a question, just briefly, because I do have a couple like first carry, first reception, all that kind of props. Do you like betting props that get over? Because some of these, obviously, the game you're sweating it out. Do you like to have a fair amount of them? Because I think that's what the point of these props is. People love the prop, like getting paid, like in the first.
Yep.
That's kind of like why I like to have a ton on Edwards-Helaire over 3.5 yards.
You want to just keep the sweat going. By the way, I looked this up. The first duet of the U.S. national anthem at the Super Bowl since Super Bowl 40, which is Aretha Franklin and Aaron Neville. That one went over 2 minutes, 2 minutes and 9 seconds. By the way, Zach Tantillo said, no, don't do it, in all caps, take the under. Confirmed, take the over. All right, next one. This one's a little more normal. First challenge. First team that's going to use the challenge. Bruce fucking Arians is using the first challenge, and it's going to blow everyone's mind. They're going to go, wait, what? He's challenging this? It's Bruce Arians. He's using the first challenge. Next one. Team to record the first sack. I thought this was really interesting.
I bet this.
Okay, the plus money is Kansas City.
Yeah, I bet it.
Tom Brady is. No. I get that he's, but like really.
But not only that, but and we talked about this on the Daily Betting podcast. Any firsts.
The team that has the ball first.
Correct. That's the thing. Tampa. Again, we could be wrong about Arians taking the ball, but if that's even, let's say, 60% true,
the Chiefs are deferring. So
yeah, exactly. So, and it's also true about does the first kickoff go as a touchback, all that kind of stuff. You have to think about that in light of Tampa most likely being the team that has the ball first.
So the Chiefs are plus 124 on DraftKings Sportsbook, the team to record the first sack. I'll also mention this. The stuff about Mahomes versus the blitz has been dramatically overblown, but it should be noted that he has taken 4 fucking sacks on 160 blitz dropbacks, okay? So, anyways. Okay, I have one more semi-normal one before my last non-normal one. Long shot MVPs that I like. Tyrann Mathieu, 40-1. And Leonard Fournette as an emotional hedge at 25-1. I've also bet as an emotional hedge Leonard Fournette to score an anytime touchdown and to score 2+ touchdowns.
You did say that on Sunday.
Yeah, I'm just letting you know. Okay, here's my last wonky one. The halftime show. Do you know who the artist is?
Shakira. I mean, Shakira's a lifetime achievement.
Yeah. You're not going to beat Shakira. It's actually, here's a hint. It's Austin Gale's favorite band. The Weeknd.
Oh, nice.
So the story goes that Austin Gale, our good friend, I don't know if he's told this on his pod, but Austin Gale.
If he hasn't, he will.
Austin Gale was on a date. That's true. Austin Gale was on a date. He brought the girl back, and she said, "Do you have any music?" And he goes, "Sure. What do you want?" And she goes, "What about The Weeknd?" And he goes, "Oh, I love them." It's one guy.
Yeah. Oh, Whitney Houston, by the way, 2:15 on her national anthem in Tampa.
I need to re-listen to that. Okay. So The Weeknd, may have heard of him. His first song, the favorite at, I think, plus 165 or 175, depending on where you look, is Blinding Lights, the one that's in the commercial. Okay. I think that's a little cliche. Okay. Now, I went and looked at this. In his tours that he did in 2020, Blinding Lights was the opener in 5 of 9.
Okay. That's a good edge.
Okay. That's decent. But to me, I just don't see them going with the song that everyone knows right off the bat. So I'm going to give you a couple of longer shots. And what I did is I went back and I looked at some songs that have been openers for him in previous years. So there'll be songs that people know, that they like, that they could open with. And I listened to them again to make sure that because I think the opening beat has to be one that is a little special.
Well, it at least has to be one that doesn't elicit like moral outrage.
Okay, so that's why Can't Feel My Face, which is a song about doing drugs, I don't think will be the first one that he's going to go with. By the way, the funniest part is he has a lyric in another song that I'm forgetting the name of, where he jokes about the fact that he won a Nickelodeon award for that song, Can't Feel My Face When I'm With You, which is talking about doing cocaine.
Speaking of doing, Mitch Trubisky also won a Nickelodeon award.
Nickelodeon's on fire. Okay, so two songs that are plus 250 that have been openers for him in previous years. Pray For Me, which is also featuring Kendrick Lamar, which I think could be a sneaky one to go with because people love Kendrick Lamar. And then Starboy, which has a good beat, I think can work as the opener. And then a little bit of a long shot, which is The Hills at 10-1, because it's got a beat that I could see him coming out to.
Okay.
I bet all 3 of those.
Nice. Okay. I'm going to stay away from
the guy you don't know?
Yeah. I mean, I thought it was Shakira.
Yeah, that's maybe Shakira will show up. Maybe that's how you can find that somewhere on a book in Antigua, and you can bet that. All right. Anything else for the Super Bowl?
Oh, man. Thank you all for staying with us for this season. I think that's
yes.
I think
it's a good point.
This has been a season where simultaneously we're on pins and needles the whole time.
Yep.
But I do think we've had a great deal of fun. Hopefully you've added value to your betting and just general football experience. But we really appreciate, getting to chop it up and talk football twice a week on here. It's been great. It's obviously sad that it's coming to one more game, but I think that this will be a great game. Think about this, George.
If we had to end on a game, this is the one, right?
If Mahomes doesn't win this game, does he have a chance of ever overtaking Brady as the greatest of all time?
The Romo question?
Yeah. I don't think so. I mean, what does he have to do?
If he doesn't beat Brady this game. Ah, man. I kind of disagree, and here's why I disagree. The stats that he's going to put up over the course of his 20-year career are going to be so ridiculous that I think he will win enough Super Bowls for it to not be as big of a deal. But I do agree, if he wins this game, he is in the driver's seat in terms of having that opportunity.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think it's a little bit much to be like he can never overcome someone if he loses.
But do you think so? The question this season has always been about where is Kansas City's motivation at, and we all sort of like papered over the whole season for them, and obviously Brady, wired like no one else.
Yep.
One of the more impressive seasons we've ever seen. If you add it all up, the motivation's there for Brady. Motivation's been there the entire postseason. Mahomes, and he seems like a gem of a human, great interview, nice guy. But on the field, he's kind of an assassin, right? And you think, is that enough motivation to like? To me, I have a really hard time doubting him in a situation like that.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you. I have one more long shot actually.
Ooh,
for you for the halftime show. I feel it coming. I think Daft Punk. I think could kind of got a cool opener. Anyways, that's our show. Thank you guys for hanging out with us. We'll be back on Sunday night. We're gonna go live. We're gonna do it because we're here.
We gonna be in studio?
Why not?
Let's do it.
Might have to bring in a bottle of tequila to get us through it, but we'll have some reactions. We'll see where your head's at, and it'll be a lot of fun. We're gonna get right into draft season.
Our guy Quinn will already have a T-shirt made for the champion.
Yeah, there you go. So thanks for hanging out. We'll see you guys. Enjoy the game. Peace.